Thank you, everyone, being with us for another strong, and it's going to be our 10th meeting this morning. And I would like to extend my thanks to our dear speaker from Amman, Jordan, Suhair Sonakrot. And I will leave the floor to my colleagues from the School of Pharmacy, to Dr. Versatility, to introduce our lecturer. And then we will, and she will moderate this session. And thank you once more for being with us. And please use the chat box for the other speakers to send us your questions. And at the end of the session, we will be happy to take your questions or comments. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Director. I would like to introduce the guest editor, the guest speaker, our today's guest speaker to you. Dr. Suhair Sonakrot is an associate professor of pharmaceutics, specialized at drug delivery and nanomedicine at Al Zaytuna University of Jordan, Faculty of Pharmacy. Dr. received her Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy from University of Jordan in 2007, after which she joined the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Pharmacy, where she obtained her PhD in biopharmaceutical sciences in 2013. During her PhD, she worked on various projects involving the development of lipid and polymer-based nanocarriers for targeted anti-cancer drug delivery. She then worked as a research specialist at the Institute for Tuberculosis Research at University of Illinois at Chicago, where she developed polymeric micelles to improve the bioavailability of new discovered anti-tubercular peptides. Afterwards, she returned to Jordan, where she joined the Faculty of Pharmacy at Al Zaytuna University. Dr. Sonakrot is a distinguished pharmaceutical scientist whose research focuses on the development of nanoscale solutions to tackle delivery challenges of poorly water-soluble drug candidates, with a special interest in the valorization of plant polyphenols, both as therapeutic agent and as a nanomaterial building blocks. She has authored more than 30 peer-reviewed publications in reputable journals and currently holds the highest number of citations across Al Zaytuna University and the highest H-index at the Faculty of Pharmacy. Notably, she was a Fulbright visiting scholar in Professor Philip Messersmith Group at University of California, Berkeley from 2016 to 2017, and a Daniel Turnberg Fellow in Professor Khalud Al-Jamal's group at King's College, London, United Kingdom. She also received the 2018 the World Academy of Sciences Prize for Young Scientists from Jordan, and is currently the only female Jordanian member of the Arab-German Young Academy of Science and Humanities. Today, Dr. Sonakrot will present us the versatility of plant polyphenols as therapeutic agents and nanoparticle building blocks. Dr. Sonakrot, thank you so much for accepting our invitation in the periodic virtual event of our university. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Fatih, for the very nice introduction. And it is my pleasure to be here with you this morning, virtually. So like Dr. Fatima mentioned, I'm interested in working with plant polyphenols on two aspects as therapeutic agents, where we try to formulate nanoparticle solutions to improve their delivery. And also which is the main subject of my presentation today, is how we use them to make nanoparticles. So in this case, they will be the vehicle themselves. So this is basically the main focus of my research group at Zaytuna University. And as you may know, we like to, or we are very interested in the applications of nanotechnology for drug delivery because of its many advantages, such as enhancing the solubility of poorly soluble compounds and controlling drug release, the ability to achieve targeting, such as in cancer, and also the ability to change their size, shape, and surface properties. As you can see from the pictures, we have many types of nanoparticles to achieve these advantages. The first focus of my research is to utilize plant polyphenols as therapeutic agents. As you also may know, they are very abundant in nature, and they have numerous biological activities in cancer, in inflammation, in diabetes, and also in cardiovascular disease, among many other uses for these compounds. But unfortunately, they have, or most of them have poor water solubility, so we have to find solutions to able to make them useful as therapeutic agents. And in this area, we have published a few papers where we try to investigate the conventional types of nanovehicles, like improve the delivery efficiency of these compounds. So I will not go into too much details because this is all published work. And if you are interested, you can look it up. It's mostly been the work of my master's students. So my very first master's student, we investigated the effect of the copolymers PEG-PLA and PEG-PCL on the encapsulation efficiency and drug release of quercetin in the form of polymeric micelles. And then we also formulated pH-sensitive nanoparticles for quercetin. The polymer used was called the Udrajet S100, which is specific for colon targeting. And we studied their efficacy as anti-colon cancer nanomedicines. And then we moved on to, through a collaboration with a colleague from phytochemistry, where she had this promising compound isolated from Teucrium. The common name is germander. It's a plant common to the Mediterranean region, and she isolated a bunch of compounds, one of which is cercidiol. And but basically, there has been no publication or no study where this compound, although it had promising anti-cancer activity, it was not formulated into any type of dosage form. So we saw this as a polymeric nanocapsules with an oil core and a PEG-PCL shell, and we characterized this nanoparticle formulation and its bioactivity in cancer cells as well. And then we also worked, this was actually the effort of one of my undergraduate students, where we took thymoquinone. It's not exactly polyphenol, but it's also another potent natural compound from Nigella sativa, the black seed. And we encapsulated it into either nanospheres, like conventional nanoparticles, or oil-cored nanocapsules. And we found that the nanocapsule formulation performed much better, and it showed more sustained release and potent anti-cancer activity, especially against colorectal cancer cells and pancreatic cancer cells. And also, when we tested it in mice in vivo, it showed a much better bioavailability after oral absorption. So this is a summary of our work where we used polyphenols or natural products as therapeutic agents in the form of various types of nanoparticle formulations. Another very interesting, or for me, it's more exciting track of my research is to investigate the plant polyphenols as nanoparticle precursors or building blocks to make nanoparticles. So the reason is that it's well known that polyphenolic compounds have unique properties, and they've been historically used for coatings and for leather tanning. For example, they can undergo metal chelation, and hydrogen bonding. They have pH responsiveness and free radical scavenging activity, and light absorbance, especially in the UV region. Especially, we are interested in this unique property of their polymerization potential, that they can form polymers under certain conditions. So that's where it came from, our interest in these polyphenols. And the inspiration came from the famous dopamine. The first study published in 2011 reported the formation of nanoparticles from dopamine due to the oxidation of the catechol moieties over here in basic conditions, forming these nice looking nanoparticles. So essentially, the catechol compounds with the catechol moiety, when they undergo oxidation, this makes the ring over here, the phenyl ring, reactive towards nucleophiles, which initiates a sequence of reactions resulting in the formation of these polymeric structures or oligomeric structures. So most of the applications were to obtain surface coatings, but the ability to control the reaction so that we can obtain spheres, that's the challenge, the main challenge. So this was the first clue or the first hint at the ability of those a polyphenolic compound to form nanoparticles. And then another group a few years later reported the formation of nanoparticles from green tea extracts that are rich in polyphenols through a similar mechanism. So basically, as long as you have these catechol OH groups, and it can undergo oxidation under certain conditions. It can react with itself and form these, and you can control it in a way to obtain nanospheres or nanoparticles. So in our case, we looked at quercetin because we were already working with it as a therapeutic agent. We had it available in the lab. So we wanted to see if this structure can actually form nanoparticles with a similar mechanism. And the proposed mechanism was that when these catechol OH groups, the adjacent ones, undergo oxidation, whether at high pH or in the presence of a base or an oxidizing agent, the ring becomes reactive. And basically, if you have a nucleophile in the reaction vessel, it can attack the ring, resulting in a cascade of reactions that lead to the formation of these oligomers, and then they can maybe self-assemble into nanoparticles. So through I think over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been trying to manipulate the reaction conditions, and fortunately, we were able to successfully form different types of or different size, different properties of nanoparticles. By example, our first attempt was to incubate quercetin in an alkaline buffer at pH 9. And through a series of purifications, we were able to obtain nanoparticles around 40 nanometers in size. And we were able to load them with doxorubicin as anti-cancer drug, and also with polyethylene glycol to make them sterically stable. And we were able to achieve controlled drug release. And the nanoparticles were slightly less toxic than, or less potent than the free drug, because most likely because of the delayed release of the drug. But they were taken efficiently by the cancer cells. So that was our first, or let's say the prototype nanoparticles. So we wanted to further refine the procedure. As you know, the prototype were formed in aqueous buffer, and dox had no problem dissolving because it is water soluble, the salt form at least. But most of the anti-cancer drugs are hydrophobic. So we wanted to modify the procedure to incorporate hydrophobic drugs. At the same time, we wanted to minimize the reaction steps. So instead of like one step to make the nanoparticles and then another step to add the drug and another step to add the polyethylene glycol, we wanted to make it like a one-pot procedure, just mix everything together, make quercetin into a polymer, and at the same time form the nanoparticles. So we incubate the quercetin with the model hydrophobic drug we used was curcumin and the polyethylene glycol plus a base like triethylamine or pyridine in DMSO, a water miscible universal solvent, organic solvent. So we hypothesized that if we mix them together with the base will oxidize quercetin and it will be able to form a polymeric structure. And then if we perform dialysis, like the way we make polymeric micelles from amphiphilic polymers, we can obtain nanoparticles. Just mix everything together and perform dialysis, then we'll be able to obtain these drug-loaded pegylated nanoparticles. And indeed, we were successful. We were able to form nanoparticles that were slightly larger than the first type. They were around 90 nanometers in size. So we took them further and we characterized them. For example, we tested the cytotoxicity in vitro, and they were equally potent like the free drug. The cellular uptake was also similar to the free drug. And we took it a step further, tested their accumulation in vivo in a tumor xenograft model. And in this case, we loaded them with DIR as a near infrared dye and performed in vivo imaging up to 24 hours. And we could see that they could accumulate in the tumor. So they work for passive targeting. And we also injected the animals with the curcumin nanoparticles and measured, after 24 hours, we measured the fluorescence of curcumin in the tumor tissues, and we found that it was significantly higher than the control, meaning that it was able to reach the tumors and accumulate there by passive targeting. So this was performed at King's College London, Khulud Al-Jamal's lab, where she specializes in the preclinical evaluation of different types of nanomedicines. And then we also tried a third approach, and we wanted to see how if we oxidize quercetin using an oxidizing agent and dialyze the solution, then will it form nanoparticles? And in this case, we tested the oxidizing agent sodium periodate, and we incubate the quercetin with increasing amounts of this oxidizing agent. And indeed, we were able to obtain nanoparticles with a range of colors. As we increase the ratio of the oxidizing agent, they become darker and darker, like from light brown to dark brown in color. And interestingly, the size was even bigger. It was 180 nanometers. And it depends on the ratio. They had moderate to very good polydispersity index. The best one was NP1, where the ratio was 1:1 between quercetin and the oxidizing agent. And we tested their antioxidant activity. The highest in the navy bars belongs to the unmodified quercetin. As you know, it's a very potent antioxidant. And after we make the nanoparticles, because we incubate with an oxidizing agent, we expect the antioxidant activity to be reduced. And it was lower, but it was still there. So they still contain some antioxidant activity. And we tested their biocompatibility with human dermal fibroblasts, and they were very biocompatible. So we think maybe they can be useful for cosmetic preparations because their color resembles like the skin tone color. So we can apply them on the skin as antioxidant or UV protective nanoparticles because they can absorb in the UV region. And so that's the story with quercetin. As you can see, we were able to obtain a lot of interesting results from it. And then we decided to look at other polyphenols. people were working with green tea. So we were thinking, how about coffee, Arabica coffee or Turkish coffee? So we tested the hypothesis by making aqueous coffee extracts. Basically, we were making coffee in the lab, just heating the coffee beans in hot water, and either just let them stir under air or adding an oxidizing agent. Because we know that somehow we need the polyphenolic compounds to be oxidized to form these polymers or nanoparticles. So we brought different types of coffee in terms of the roasting degree. We used the unroasted coffee beans, medium roasted, and dark roasted coffee beans. And we compared between each of them using under the same conditions, but either without adding anything, just letting them stir in air, or adding sodium periodate as an oxidizing agent, or copper sulfate as another oxidizing agent. And as you can see from the images, we were able to obtain these different colored extracts. And when we looked at them under the TEM, we also found that they are actually nanoparticles. So even just by the presence of air as an oxidizing agent, the polyphenols in the aqueous coffee extracts can form these nanoparticles. But the polydispersity was rather high. So using the oxidizing agents resulted in more uniform nanoparticles, especially for the medium and dark coffee extracts. We think because the roasting process already makes the coffee components turn into polymeric materials, which can help in forming these nanoparticles. So the sizes ranged between 40 to 250 nanometers, depending on the type of coffee and depending on the oxidizing agent used. So that was also very exciting. This was a part of a work for an undergraduate student. So she was very excited when we were able to publish it finally earlier this year. And so these nanoparticles from coffee extracts, we also tested their antioxidant activity, and it was still maintained compared to the blue lines represent the air oxidized extracts. So we use them as the control. And even after we add the oxidizing agents, the extracts still maintain the antioxidant activity. So basically, we can obtain nanoparticles with different colors with antioxidant activity. So we can use them also for maybe applications. And of course, drug delivery applications are also possible. And interestingly, we tested their biocompatibility in fibroblasts. They were basically biocompatible to a high degree. But when we tested them on a cancer cell line, the MCF7 breast cancer cells, we noticed they started to show some anti-cancer activity, like they can cause a reduction in cell viability, especially the extracts prepared using copper sulfate. We think the copper ion can interact on toxicity, but as you can see, it was selective to the cancer cells. So these nanoparticles have a potential anti-cancer activity all by themselves without adding any drug. So basically, most of our work focused on the characterization, and our next steps will be to further use our findings or try to explore other applications for these nanoparticles. So we love polyphenols, if it's not obvious, and because they are basically a treasure. They keep providing us with numerous research ideas, especially that research track of synthesizing nanoparticles. It's a less conventional approach, but the methods are green. They apply different principles of green chemistry. The raw materials are widely available and they are cheap. We don't need very sophisticated equipment to make them. And throughout our various projects, we were able to achieve different types or different sizes of the nanoparticles. We showed that we can load hydrophilic drugs and hydrophobic drugs. We can modify the surface with polyethylene glycol, and likewise, we can potentially add other surface ligands. Our in vivo studies showed they can achieve prolonged circulation and tumor accumulation with passive targeting ability. And also, especially for the nanoparticles from coffee, they have nice colors and their antioxidant activity. So they open the way for applications in sunscreens or cosmetics, or maybe for example, for hair dyes, like an organic alternative to the conventional hair dyes. So this is like a brief overview of our work throughout my time at Zaytuna University. Of course, I acknowledge the tremendous support from my co-PIs, Professor Messersmith at UC Berkeley and Professor Al-Jamal at King's College London, and at Zaytuna, my colleagues, Dr. Evin Al-Shalabi, who's the phytochemist specialist in our group, and Dr. Ala Hamad, who's in charge of the in vivo studies. She's the expert in vivo studies. And of course, it's behind the scenes and the undergraduate students and the different funding sources. So I thank everyone for listening, and I'd be happy to stay in touch. This is my email and my contact or my profiles at ResearchGate or Google Scholar if you want to follow up on our previous published work. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much, dear Suhair. It was a really, really interesting presentation. I do have a couple of questions, although we don't have any question in the chat box right now, but I invite our students to ask their questions, especially your presentation was really useful for students, I believe. I don't know, maybe Professor Topçu has any questions?
First of all, I congratulate you. Nice studies, and also close to our studies, especially to our Dr. Bahadur's studies, and also our pharmaceutical technology department studies. I wonder that generally which type of polymers are used as nanocarriers in polyphenolic structures. Sure, depending on the polyphenol type, it can be changed, but generally, which one do you prefer?
So we use PLGA, or we synthesize PEGylated polymers like PEG-PLA or PEG-PCl. We synthesize them, and they are cheap to obtain the raw materials. So I make the student synthesize the polymer and use it for the preparation.
Okay, thank you. Also, you mentioned that you are interested in tuberculosis, but for this type of agents, do you use, do you make any nanocarriers for them?
So unfortunately, this was just briefly when I first graduated with my PhD, because the center at UIC, they're specializing in finding candidates for tuberculosis. So at the time, the best candidate they found was very hydrophobic. So we made them into micelles, which significantly improved their solubility, and they were able to test it in vivo. But after that, I didn't get a chance because it's very difficult to obtain the tuberculosis animal model here. We don't have the expertise, so I did not have a chance. But we're one of my recently graduated students performed a study on like an inflammation model. So we were able to make nanoparticles out of a compound called roifuloside or roifulin, which is a diglucoside of epigenine. And we showed it showed the promising anti-inflammatory activity in an animal model. So we are very excited about maybe potentially publishing this work soon. The student just graduated. But we try to explore like different types of animal models, but maybe, as you know, like it's challenging sometimes, especially these days, to find the right expertise. But
you're right. Even for antimicrobial activity case, it is not easy in tuberculosis microbes because there are many such, maybe more than 100.
Yeah.
Congratulations anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, thank you so much, Professor Topçu, for the questions. So, dear Suhair, I just want to know, have you ever searched for the type of the nanomaterials that you prepare from the polymeric version of natural products? I mean, do you think like spheres, like liposomes, do they have a hole inside them? I mean, what do you think? Where is the doxorubicin settled inside of those nanoparticles?
So that's what I'm trying to obtain, like maybe using X-ray techniques. I try to apply for synchrotron beam time, but then the corona came, and so at least from the images, the TEM images, they don't look like they are core shell. They look like a matrix type. So we think they are more like softer, maybe not very like micelles in size, but we don't know for sure. Which I'm hoping to be able to get some X-ray scattering analysis soon, but it's very challenging because the material is new and there's not very much literature evidence on what to do. So
Right. Okay, this was the thing that I wondered. And the second thing is that, so when you start polymerizing the natural products, to me it seems that this will go forever. Like the chains will get longer and longer. What does it make to stop the polymerization and make a sphere?
So you are right. I think they are not very.
The land also some structures can make polymerization, I think, to me, from different side, depending on the structure.
Exactly,
this is difficult to control.
Yes, exactly. So we cannot, maybe we need some radio labeling approach or some very highly advanced analysis techniques to know exactly where the binding occurs, because it can occur anywhere on the, it's a very big structure. And so even for dopamine, which is more widely studied, they still don't know the exact structure of polydopamine. So it's challenging.
Right. So thank you so much. It seems that we do not have questions either in YouTube or here in the chat box. So I think we shall say thank you to Dr. Sunokrot.
Thank you very much indeed. It was our pleasure to host you and hoping to see you face to face in the campus in the nearest time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And also, I would like to extend the invitation for you to come visit us soon. So you are welcome. It's your second home.
The same here. The same here. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So hope to see you in Istanbul, dear Suhair. Take a very good care. Thank you one more time for accepting our invitation.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, Susucan.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you.